Death is the new sex. In the 1800s, people did not talk about sex except in euphemisms, but death was an everyday occurrence. When someone was dying, you didn't say they're passing. You're saying they're dying. They died, they're dead. We're afraid of it. This whole series about death, the final frontier, I thought I'll do it in a humorous way. And I figured out how to carve wood. And I made these little caskets, and each one commemorates somebody that had an interesting life and a visual life, like Coco Chanel during World War II. She was living at the Ritz with a Nazi officer. When the war ended, she was in disgrace. She moved to Switzerland for a few years, but eventually moved back, and the house of Chanel thrived. I tried to put a lot of detail into it, like the little Nazi emblem on the belt. Coffin handles that the pallbearers would use, they're the intertwined C's, which was her logo. Le Corbusier, who was famous for building on little pylons. John Montague, Earl of Sandwich. Roy Lichtenstein. André Lenotre, a French landscape architect and did Versailles. Julia Child, who was American but French in spirit. Fred Astaire, casket of the unknown soldier. You see the stars, see a little peace sign. Guest tells about our oil dependence. Dancer Isadora Duncan, she was in a Ducati. Her scarf flew back and wound around the wheel of the car, and she strangled. Jackson Pollock died in a car accident. He was drunk. Frank Lloyd Wright, the architect, his whole casket is kind of cantilevered. Mata Hari, there's a question whether she spied for the Germans or for the French. Picasso, I combined some of the classical elements for the casket handles, the harlequin pattern, the dove. I started the final frontier with these 30 caskets, and then I moved on to 6 mixed media wall pieces. This one is about legal methods of execution, and it's called Judicial Dispatch. Evolution of the Death's Head, about historical tombstones. In Puritan days, the tombstone would be decorated with a skull and crossbones, but over time it had morphed into a little cherub with wings. These 2 pieces are called Threnody 1 and 2, Threnody being a song of lamentation. Western mourning customs, inscriptions taken from actual tombstones, my favorite being, I told you I was sick. I will seize on a subject, and it has to become a series. My work has dealt with things that bother me: violence in America, death, and politics. This new series called Wheel, Deal, Steal, Then Spin, dealing with how since the time our country was founded, there has been a disparate power between the haves and the have-nots. Other pieces in the Wheel Deal series deal with such things as early child labor reform. There's a piece called A Tea Party, which deals with propaganda and so-called patriotism. A lot of my earlier work dealt with profiling, with identity. The Mark portraits, 17 pieces. I had a photograph of my husband printed on really good paper, and then I overlaid the entire surface with hand-drawn media to change his clothing and the background to give him different identities. As a reformed English major, I think I've always brought the love of ideas, the love of words into the work. I think one thing that ties all of my work together is how there's always an element of repulsion and an element of attraction working together at the same time. An older series called Funked Defunct, about antique medical instruments. They're beautiful and they're iconic. And then you find out that it's actually an 18th century tool for the removal of a cancerous breast. That's been a constant, I think, in my work, that beauty and menace, beauty and menace.